this is going to be a big one. Okay, let me breathe. Oh, I had an epiphany 2 days ago where with TikTok, what started off as just sharing my outfits and sharing stories became dangerous for me because of how much time I was spending on it. So I would commute, but I would spend anywhere from 1 to 2 hours on TikTok a day. This isn't counting Instagram either. This is TikTok, which amounts to, I think on average, 10 hours a week. Alexa, 520 divided by 24. Thank you. 21.67, let's round it to 22 days a year is how much time I spend on TikTok. I could probably round that up to like 25 days because some days I was spending ages on the app. That's almost a month, you know, if I just keep rounding, of my life scrolling on TikTok. I don't remember what I've watched on TikTok. As of this morning, deactivated my TikTok account. Oh, my hips are not what they used to be. 1 week update, let's talk about it. I call this little pencil case my anti-scrolling pencil case, and in here I have a few necessities. I have my stylus, a bunch of pretty coloured highlighters, a multicolour pen, a nice and inky black pen, a power bank, glue tape, and most importantly, this little guy. This is my Field Notes book, volume 2. Every time I have felt the urge to scroll, especially when I've been on the train, I've whipped out this bad boy. In this, I have a very important page. It says, Social Media Detox Experiment. And every day, I have been writing down a little note. We're up to day 7. In the intro to this video, I was talking about TikTok and how I wanted to get off that. But I have found a very interesting thing, which for some reason I didn't predict, and that is that I found myself opening Instagram a lot more. I'm actually quite surprised at these findings, and I've learned a lot about myself. Ultimately, day 1, honestly, nothing really concerned me. I noticed that my thumb often went to where the TikTok app was on my phone, but when it wasn't there, I was fine with it. Now, simultaneously to this, I had privated my Instagram account, stopped using my 6,000 follower one, and booted 400 people off of my personal one. So currently, I think at the moment, I've got 180 followers on my personal. Everybody who is following me over on that account, I know in real life, or I have built some sort of online friendship with just through DMing each other over the months and years. But you can see here, day 2, I started to think more about making my Insta public. I couldn't survive 24 hours, 48 hours without starting to think about how I was no longer being perceived by multiple people online. That concerned me. On the 3rd day, I made my Instagram public. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I felt this innate desire to be perceived, but then I immediately felt guilty and turned it back on to private. I told myself, Bethany, you will sit in your discomfort for at least a week. I just want to capture this week one moment. I have turned off the privacy on my Instagram account, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times before turning it off like immediately after. The first time I did it, it was like, I don't know, it felt wrong, so I turned it off again. The 4th time I did it, which was about 10 minutes ago, I felt an anxious reaction to it. Why do I keep trying to turn it on? What is going on? I just wanted to capture this, and I feel like I started out this video saying it's all about TikTok. I've deleted TikTok. I've not even really thought about TikTok. It's now Instagram that I'm battling with. I think I'm so used to being perceived that I feel like I've lost part of my identity and who I am without having such open social media accounts. I don't know. I need to make it a week
without having a public Instagram account?
Why am I so addicted to being perceived? I don't have an answer, except I do have an answer, and it all comes down to the idea of oversharing.
So my week 2 shenanigans took me down the rabbit hole of the podcast called The Psychology of Your 20s. Thank you to my bestie for suggesting this. The specific episode is The Power of Oversharing. And I just wanted to share with you a few of the key takeaways that I got from this podcast. Sharing vulnerabilities is not the same as being vulnerable. Social media as a personal diary can have serious consequences such as privacy, but also being addicted to the validation being provided by strangers and unable to emotionally regulate without their input is not great. I need to learn to regulate uncomfortable moments without sharing them on the internet, and intensity does not equal intimacy.
A flow on from that also comes from my people-pleasing side of me, where I am trying to show people how cool, how hip, how relatable I am, and I'm relying on them, and it's a lot of relying on them rather for validating my image of self. It takes a lot of mental energy to try regulate other people's impressions, and it's just not worth it. It's impossible. So ultimately, just a reminder to myself that things do not have to be shared and validated for them to be valid, but also that I don't want to turn my memories and things into a commodification too much. For me, I have really learned during this week that I have a line. I like to document memories and share some things online and collect moments, but there is a line that I shouldn't have to cross. And that, my friends, has been my week 2 learning. Ultimately, babes, stop oversharing on the internet because you can validate your own experiences. Okay, let's see what week 3 brings me. Right, so for week 3, I don't feel like I have much to update you on. If week 2 was the week of oversharing, then week 3 has been the week of content. Don't know why I did like the cutthroaty sign. Oh my God. Ah, cute. Okay, so let's look in my handy dandy notebook. Very close and personal. Let me back up. I think this was the week in which I noticed the positive effects. I feel like week 2 was the hump. I was getting over this idea and this realization that I didn't need to overshare all the time. And week 3 has been the week of realizing that this is a creative space where I no longer have to censor myself. By that I mean, if you don't know, I am a high school teacher, and previously I had to be very careful about what I posted online because I was public, and I just had to be careful. It couldn't be inappropriate, it couldn't be too unprofessional. But I go out and I go to bars, and I like to swear a little bit sometimes for comedic effect. I got a bike and I was very excited about it, and it has a cute picnic basket, so I called it my picnic bitch bike. I still feel uncomfortable swearing on camera, I'm sorry about that. But on Instagram, the platform I have been on the longest, aside from Facebook, which I don't count, I felt free. And then that creativity has flowed into YouTube. Since starting this social experiment, I rebooted my YouTube channel, and I have been able to put out 2 videos a week. 2 videos a week after doing 1 intermittently for a while before I then went on like a elongated full-on break with 0 content. I've found my creative flow flowing more. I also wrote on here 2 almost like TikTok revelations for me. Number 1, my TikTok profile had been public and my students would see it, and I didn't really care about my students seeing it. That isn't the reason why I deactivated my TikTok account. For my mental health and less time on a screen, if I haven't been clear, actually. But they were like, Miss, where's your TikTok account? And they're like, oh, but I liked it. And I really stood back and I was like, but I didn't. And I'm no longer putting content out for my audience for them to like. I'm doing things for myself. Social media isn't my job. I do not get paid to post any of this. Lies for YouTube, however, I get like maybe 20 cents a video on average. So really, pittance, isn't it? And so I really had a revelation that I was properly starting to do things for myself now. And the only other kind of like interesting point that came up was that someone followed me, like requested to follow me on Insta, and I did accept them, but then quite quickly I actually deleted their requests, and made them unfollow me, because you can do that if you didn't know. And it was this little moment for me of realizing for a second there, I got caught up in my follower number again. I didn't know this person, and their feed wasn't obviously, how do I call this? Not a bot or not a creep, basically. So I guess this is me saying to you guys now as well, if you want to follow me on my Instagram, go for it in terms of requesting a message, requesting a follow rather, but flick me a message or a DM, or if your account is public, I might message you, just letting me know why you want to follow me, because I'm hiding from the students, I'm hiding from pervs, and I'm hiding from bots. So if you're a real person that doesn't fit into one of those three those three groups, feel free to flick me a message if you want. Now, I do realize that this means I'm not as easily accessible, but this also means my Instagram is treated like a close friends list all the time. So that's basically my update for week 3. I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling positive, I'm feeling energetic. I have decreased amounts of anxiety, I have increased amounts of positivity and creativity. And that's just where I am. I'm very intrigued to see where the last week of this is going. I realized when I was editing this, I never told you guys how long I'm doing it for. 4 weeks, a month-ish, 28 days to break a habit vibes. So 4 weeks. I've got 1 week left. Week 4, me coming at ya. Okay, week 4. We have done 1 month without TikTok. We have gone on this crazy path together, and I have my findings. We can just have the psycho holding ribbon, and he's now festive. Okay, Bethany, what are your findings? This did not go as planned whatsoever. I guess I didn't have a plan, but it did not go as expected. It did not go as expected whatsoever, because I really thought TikTok was going to be the kicker for me. I would find it really hard. But what I discovered basically at the beginning is I just transferred my need to be perceived onto the different app, which is Instagram. If I were to chart out the past 4 weeks, week 1, it was almost like the calm before the storm in those first few days. And then the last few days became really like private and private, private and private. I really started to realize that I felt the need for validation from external sources, not even people I knew, mind you, just online numbers. Then in the second week, I learned why I delved into podcasts. I didn't really mention it in this video, but I was reading The Untethered Soul, which is like a self-helpy book, which I had been wanting to read for so long. Editing me will have popped up on the screen, I imagine. So week 2 was very much like figuring things out. Then week 3 was putting that into practice, starting to see the positives. Here we are at week 4, and I can honestly say, hand on heart, that I will not be re-downloading TikTok anytime in the future. I always feel the need to put the caveat on that, because if it's ever coming from a healthy place and it's something for me to be creative, because creating digitally is a thing I enjoy, then I don't want to stop myself from doing it. But obviously right now, hand on heart, what side is my heart on? I am not intending on going back onto TikTok, but also I am not intending to publicize my Instagram account, because here are my final findings, and I cannot go against the evidence. One interesting thing that happened to me is that the trains were down, and so that means I have been commuting with a colleague, which is fine, and I'm so grateful. I really don't have another choice other than taking 2 hours to go to work one day, which is just freaking ridiculous. But I found myself missing the train, and I was trying to figure out why. And it's because when I'm on the train, I sit there and I had been writing in this bad boy, and I had been reading my self-help book and listening to podcasts and really having me time. So that's just a really interesting thing for me. I didn't miss the trains because that's when I used to scroll, but now my body and my soul was craving that calm before and after a busy work day. Just more creative in general. Now, I did find that I was posting a lot more on Instagram stories and creating a lot more YouTube video content, but I think that comes from a healthy place. Hey babe. It's because for me, I was recognizing that the desire to share from that space was coming from I wanted to share what I was loving in my life with my family and friends, but also recognizing that it wasn't for the validation, because like, quite frankly, my numbers are not high if we're talking about content. What do you call it? Like interactions. My Instagram posts get maybe 16 likes over there, and it really, I can proudly say, it really doesn't bother me. I'm like checking in with myself that this isn't a lie, and it's not a lie. It doesn't bother me, so I'm happy with that. An interesting side effect that I found was that I spent less money on clothes during this month. Now, part of that is because I'm genuinely trying to slow down my consumption just in general for both space reasons and like financial reasons. But I found myself being less influenced, which is silly that it surprised me really, but I really truly thought I was immune to the social media influencing. But I've really slowed down and reassessed how I spend my money, and I actually put a rule in place where unless it is cheaper than $30, I will not buy it straight away. I instead put it on a wish list. And another surprising result from this social experiment is that I now feel connected with the people in my life more. And so by that I mean, when I unfollowed and like kicked off people from following me over on Instagram, I actually actively went and sought out a lot of my current new work colleagues, because I hadn't gone through and followed people from my new life in Australia. And now, like, them and I send each other reels and comment on each other's stories. And then when I get to work, we yarn and catch up about what we saw. So this is the social media now for me has changed from being a toxic space of trying to get validation from strangers to posting more, caring less, but building better connections with people I know. And it's just, when I started this whole social experiment on myself, I wrote here that my 3 main goals, my purpose was less screen time, which by the way, just general, yes, my screen time on social media has gone down. I wouldn't say my screen time in general has decreased because I spend a lot more time editing videos. But if I'm talking about doom scrolling, oh my God, it's been like quartered. On that, I do still find myself Instagram reel doom scrolling, but because I'm so much more aware of it now, I catch myself after maybe 15 minutes and then I'll pop off and go do something else. I also said more hobbies, definitely done that, journaling, YouTube, going out for a bike ride tonight, which was really nice. And lastly, less care about them. But I didn't expect actual better connections, better financial spending. Like, it's actually wild to me. And I also had a reflection before I picked up this camera, in that before I had this rebirthing of my YouTube channel, there were YouTube video ideas which were based on TikTok views and Instagram views. I don't think I still have the evidence, but I wrote down, post a reel for 30 days, the effect it had on my audience. And after quitting TikTok for 30 days, it's wild to me that I ever cared that much. It's still going to be a work in progress, and I highly recommend anybody who finds themselves doom scrolling conducts an experiment, because it feels like you've got evidence to go alongside your like experiences. You've got evidence and findings and realizations, and honestly, I cannot recommend doing something like this more. I feel... What was that? Science. I feel so much better for it. I keep waving this around because this has been a little bit of a savior. It's like how people who smoke find themselves like always eating a certain lolly, or they're always like twiddling things in their fingers like it's replaced. This little book here has replaced doom scrolling for me. Those are my 2 favorite quotes that I discovered along this journey. If you made it to the end of the video and you are yet to join this family, please consider leaving a cheeky like and subscribe down below. Enjoy all the places you go in your own reading and life adventures, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! And Merry Christmas! Although I don't think I'm publishing this in December. Still.